And I don't like this at all. I think that Labor's missed a step here. I know, Chewie, we're going to don't let, what is it, perfect get in the way of good. Is that the saying? Have I got it right?
Yeah.
But I think Labor has missed something on the inheritance here by not charging an inheritance on not charging a CGT on inheritance. There's a caveat, and I'll tell you about it shortly, because these guys did a really bad job asking about it, and they didn't give out the details. So I did some work today, actually spoke to someone in the Labor Party to get the absolute update as to what it was about how the inheritance things work. So capital gains tax on inherited properties, what happens there?
There is no capital gains tax if you inherit a property, as per your policy this week. Given older New Zealanders own the majority of assets, what is their incentive to sell them?
We heard really clear feedback from New Zealanders that they work really hard. They want to be able to pass down their family home and maybe their beach house to the next generation. That's something that they've worked over their lifetimes to build up. They want to be able to hand that down to their children. And I recognise that, and I think that is important for New Zealanders to know that they've got the certainty that they'll be able to do that.
Yeah, but how is that any different from someone else who's worked hard and has recently bought a property and wants to sell it in 5 years?
This is ultimately...
They do go round and round in circles here quite a bit, whānau. I mean, the answer to Jack Tame's question is why have you drawn a line here is because we chose to draw a line here, because it's really the only argument. Because when you're starting to talk about fair, you can go selling a house that you've owned all your life versus inheriting a house. One has no capital gains tax, the other one has. There are some caveats which these guys don't get to, which I'll explain in a minute, but this is the answer, that political parties make choices. These guys have chosen to not do it on a house that's inherited. Could they have? Yes, they chose not to. And that's the only answer. And Jack's going to go round and round for a while trying to get the answer out of him as to why he did that. And the answer is because we chose to.
Keeping the system as simple as possible. Once you get into inheritance, it raises a whole lot of different issues. And I am not proposing inheritance taxes. I'm very, very clear about that. So I do want New Zealanders to be able to inherit without an extra tax liability.
You've talked about fairness, though. You've used that term multiple times over the course of the last few days. So again, how is it fair that someone who has inherited a property, who's taken no risk whatsoever, who's put no money down whatsoever, who's seen that property increase in terms of capital value, pays zero tax, but a hard-working family who's scrimped and scraped and saved to buy an investment property, they do have to pay a capital gains?
That's an argument you could apply across inheritance of any sort, and we're not proposing an inheritance tax.
Except that this is a capital gains tax that's specifically been put in for what you've called a targeted section of properties and investments. So what is the difference between a property that's owned and is passed down as part of inheritance versus a property that's owned by someone who wants to sell it while they're still alive?
Ultimately, we've made the decision to carve out inheritance. That was a decision that we took after getting
there's
a lot of
the
feedback
answer.
from people.
What's the difference?
Well, it was a decision
That's the answer, because that's the decision we made.
that we took.
And I get that that's going to be frustrating for an interviewer, but that is the question. What then you get into is, why did you make that decision? I don't think that ever quite gets gotten to in this conversation.
Getting a lot of feedback from people that they want to be able to leave their inheritance to their kids and their grandkids.
I'm sure they do, but
we recognise that wherever you draw the line in designing a tax system, there are always going to be trade-offs and compromises.
What's the difference?
As I said, we made the decision that we're not going to be taxing
I understand.
inheritance.
What's the difference between one Rosemary Street that's been owned by a baby boomer as part of 10 properties perhaps, who passes that down to someone, that person then pays no capital gains, versus 3 Rosemary Street, which is owned by a young family who've saved up over years to buy that property and decide to sell it while they're alive? What's the difference?
Because one's inherited and one's not.
Right.
Yeah.
And you've decided, even though fairness is driving this policy, that people who've had no skin in the game, taken no risk, put no money in, they're not going to be taxed on their capital gains, whereas people who decide to sell earlier will be.
The primary driver for the policy is encouraging people to invest not in residential property, but actually to invest in productive businesses that create jobs and create opportunities for New Zealanders.
So back to that first question about inheritance though, why would someone who wants to pass down an asset to their children, why would they be incentivised to sell before they die?
Yeah, I'm sorry, Jack, that's a bit of a nonsense question, because why would they be incentivised to sell it? They would sell it if they want the money. So if the 80-year-old wants and needs the money, they'd sell it. If they don't, they'd keep it. So I don't think this would either incentivise or not incentivise. If the retiree wanted money in their account to live off, then they'd sell it. If they didn't want or need it, maybe they'd keep it. I don't think the CGT's got much to do with that.
Be incentivised to hold on to the asset so then their children don't have to pay tax?
People always make a variety of decisions throughout their lives that are the right decisions for them and for their families.
Right, so would you accept that under the inheritance settings as you've laid them out in this policy, this allows or this incentivises asset lock-in?
I mean, ultimately, families make those decisions about when they want to sell things, and that is the case now. You know, families will already make decisions around how they allocate inheritance now.
What's the incentive though to sell it? Right, if you've got a property that you want to hand down to the next generation, what's the incentive to sell it now and free up property in a constrained property market versus holding on to it for longer than you might have otherwise?
Well, there's a whole range of things that people will consider, not just tax, when they determine whether or not they're going to sell a property. They'll consider property prices, they'll consider the financial situation that they are in, they'll consider the financial situation that their kids are in.
I don't get the sense that a retiree who has multiple properties or who has a property to pass on, I don't get the sense that the capital gains tax will or won't get them to sell or not sell their house any more quickly. Now, I was a bit confused by this, and I think it would be fine to say who I spoke to, but I haven't asked permission, so I won't. And in my mind, I went, oh, but okay, so Chewie's dad leaves Chewie a house, no capital gains tax because there's no inheritance tax, but then Chewie, who already has a residence, sells that house, capital gains tax. So I was like, Jax, why isn't this an obvious answer? Isn't it that there would be capital gains tax on a house you inherit it when you sell it? But that's not the case, and this is where I think this is actually bad. This is bad policy. So I'm completely fine for no inheritance tax to pass from a house after inheritance from dad to children. Fine. No money's changed hands. It's a family asset. It was their family home. And then if someone turns it into their family home, let's say it's a single child and they pass the house on and then they live in it, then it becomes their family home. Fine, no problems at all. But normally what happens at this age, if you've got adult children who might be in their 40s, 50s, or even older, typically they'll already have a house, or if they don't, they prefer the cash and they then sell it. That means it's not their primary residence. So they should then get charged capital gains tax. So if the inheritance goes to the child as a house and then the child sells it, there should be capital gains tax on that. But under this system, there's not. Let me just read out to you exactly what the text that came back was. Dum, 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 dum. So this was how it was explained. Inherit, no tax. Sell, no tax. Inherit but decide to rent, then clock restarts and tax if when sold. So you inherit the house and you sell it straight away, that's tax-free. I think they've missed the mark there. And I don't think this is me doing perfect in the way of good. I think that's a really clear one. If they inherit a house, they pay no tax to inherit it because there's no inheritance tax. If they sell that inherited house straight away, they pay capital gains tax on that. But that's not the way it's been set up, Chewie.
Yeah. Look, inheritance tax is a fucking hand grenade. Like, I can look at other countries. So like England, as an example, has a big issue with inheritance taxes because there's a lot of multi-generational wealth, and there's a question there of like when the second Earl of Gloucester fucking pops his clogs and his son gets all his lands and titles and that sort of thing. Maybe there should be a little bit of ticket clipping here. But I think this, can we just get something across the line? And then
I hear you.
Sort of go, okay, well, we've finally done the fucking thing, and this is what we've found, and now we can look at the next thing of like, how can we make this fairer? How can we make this more effective? That's kind of where I'm at with this.
I hear you, and I think last week I agreed with you that getting something over the line is great and it's important. I just don't think this little one would have taken away, or it would have just been an easy add-on. You inherit the house. There's no inheritance tax, so you don't pay tax on inheriting a house. But once you sell that inheritance, it's not your primary family home. You then pay tax on selling the house, which means if you don't sell it and use it as a rental, you don't pay it then. You then pay it because if you do it as a rental for a year and then sell it, you pay capital gains tax. So if you sell it after a week, capital gains tax. That's the only thing I'm saying I think it should be. That's what I would have done. If I was a judge.
I think inheritance tax can be an absolute fucking minefield. And look, we started the show talking about how National is only dealing in truths and facts in this whole argument, right? So I agree. The answer to Jack's question is this is where we chose the line because this is where we chose to draw it.
Yeah,
is a full and complete answer. We can quibble around it and go, well, wouldn't it be great? you know my position on this. I'm fully in the Greens camp of like, yep, fucking land value tax, wealth tax, inheritance tax, the whole fucking thing. That would be perfect. Can you convince the electorate? Can you deal with the full court press that you're going to get from the current government? Is, look, we told you they're coming for everything.
Yeah.
So let's just focus on a battle we can fucking win. And that might be a not very exciting, but certainly moving the needle, capital gains tax.
Yeah. And let me just say this one more time so it's clear. The example I'm giving is not an inheritance tax. The example I'm giving is Chewie inherits a house from his mum or dad, whatever it was. If Chewie turns it into a rental for a year and then sells it, he would pay capital gains tax. So therefore, if Chewie then chooses to sell the house immediately, it's capital gains tax. So it's not an inheritance tax, because if you don't sell the house, there's nothing to pay until you sell the house in 2, 5, 10 years from now. So that's it.
And look, that's the conversation we're having, right? Fair and reasonable policy. Absolutely agree. But it's in the advertising and marketing, isn't it? It's what can you defend? What can you get across? You're not going to win an election on here is our policy and every conceivable fucking loophole that you can throw at us, we have solved.
Yep.
Because everybody apparently owns a multi-generational fucking dairy now, don't forget.
Well, there was another good clip that we're not playing there about, like, commercial properties are up for capital gains tax, farms aren't. What about a farm who down the road from the property where the house and the commercial sheds are, there's another commercial shed? You know, how does that, like, you know, there's no houses or residential area down there, but it's just commercial sheds. What happens there? Which is, and I think, and I wrote it down, and I think Chippy went a little bit too much to it. He said a lot what the, quote, tax working group had set out, and he said a lot what other markets around the world did. And it kind of felt like it was a bit of a cover-all. Not that I don't want to answer this question, but maybe I don't have an answer to that question right now. So, that was it. Hey, I had one that we're going to talking about means testing for doctors' visits. I think we'll do it. We've got enough time. You will do it. It's only a couple of minutes, because this is about their flagship sort of announcement at the moment around capital gains tax for doctors. And the question being, the Mowbrays. Why are we giving free doctors' visits to the Mowbrays? And that's where this conversation continues.
You and I can both afford to go to the doctor, right? As it stands.
Yep.
New Zealand's in a structural deficit. Debt servicing currently costs us almost $9 billion a year, almost $9,000 million a year. It's forecast to get up to near 11. More than primary education, secondary education, and the entire Ministry of Justice budget combined. And yet, you are going to pay for the 300,000 New Zealanders who earn more than $150,000 a year to go to the doctor for free. Why?
Well, we pay for them to go to the hospital for free if they don't go to the doctor and don't get the medical care that they need to avoid going to the hospital. So I've made the principal decision, as has the Labour Party, always stood for free.
It's funny because I both agree with what Chippy's saying, because what Chippy's saying is the Labour Party has a policy that medical attention, medical help should be free. That's it, right? But the messaging in this is we don't want them to end up in the A&E, but the point that Jack's making is wealthy people don't end up in that situation because they can afford to go to the doctor. So Jack stays on this position that the people we're talking about, the Mowbrays, they don't end up in the A&E because they haven't gone to the doctor, because they can afford to go to the doctor. So why are we paying for them to go to the doctor? And Chippy's response is twofold. It's Labour believes in a free health system, and we don't want them to go to the A&E, which Jack comes back to. So this is this thing. So I think that answer for Labour, that is, we believe in a free public health system. Done. Why should they get it free? Because our co-op, our philosophy, our ideology is giving all New Zealanders free access to healthcare. That should be the stop of the answer, rather than the justification of going, we don't want them to go to A&E. when these people aren't going to A&E. In fact, if it was the Mowbrays, they'd be going to the local private hospital and be shipped on a gold trolley to get the best service in the world by 42 doctors brought in just for them. You know what I mean? I'm obviously being silly, but yeah. So
I think this is a stupid question from Jack. Because I understand what it's stoking. Believe me, I think the only healthcare available to the Mowbrays should be none. They should be on an island full of wolves with no healthcare. Like,
is that the response? Is that the response that Chippy should have said? Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. That the Mowbrays shall be hunted for sport and harvested for meat. That's the answer that I want from Chippy. I'm not going to get it, but that's fine. The Mowbrays having access to 3 free GP visits is such a fucking non-issue that this is embarrassing that it got brought up.
I think
the Mowbrays get 3 free GP visits.
But that's what Chippy should say.
The poor family down the road also get 3 free GP visits because they fucking need them.
And the other thing that needs to be said here, which hasn't been said, and I'm making this assumption based on other coveralls, is that to carve those 300,000 people out would cost more to monitor and do that than it does to actually just give them the 3 free visits anyway. But I just want to be very clear here about Chewie's joke about the Mowbrays being hunted. We do not endorse that or support that in any way, shape, form whatsoever.
I do. I 100%.
No,
my
Chewie
name is Chewie, and I endorse this message.
Yeah, I'll just mute that microphone. So Chewie doesn't endorse that. He can't do anything about it. And that was a joke. Okay, I think he's calm. He looks calm now. I'll turn his mic back on.
Where's my weapon?
All right, we'll keep going.
I scared my dog.
And that should be free healthcare across the board. Because otherwise we're saying to people, if you go
free
to the doctor,
healthcare
you get
across the
charged for
board.
that. If you don't go to the doctor and you get even sicker, you go to the hospital for free.
But you've just said that you can afford to go. So for wealthier New Zealanders or New Zealanders on higher income, the cost is no barrier. And we're facing incredibly constrained fiscal environment as it stands. So how can you justify
access to free healthcare should be an entitlement that all New Zealanders benefit from. All New Zealanders pay
Yes.
tax. Those on higher incomes pay more tax.
Stop.
And so they should have access to free universal healthcare.
Despite the fact that
That's
we're
it.
Great
$9 billion
answer.
on debt service
Yeah.
right now.
Ultimately,
answer.
if more people go to the doctor and therefore don't end up in hospital,
No.
it will actually save the health system money.
Except we've just agreed that for those of us who are fortunate to be on higher incomes, the cost isn't a barrier.
If you look at the government's debt forecasts, what is one of the biggest things driving increase in government debt well into the future? It's increasing costs of healthcare. By tackling these issues, by getting people going to the doctor so that they can stay healthier rather than ending up in hospital, we can help to tackle that long-term challenge.
So is cost a barrier for New Zealanders who earn more than 150 grand a year?
Regardless of whether it's a cost
No,
or
I mean,
not.
that's,
I want New
that's-
Zealanders
of course,
going to
we
the
all
doctor.
want New Zealanders, but your argument here is premised on the fact you say that we'll reduce.
It's the going to the doctor thing. Yeah, I agree with you, but I know that this is going to be a conversation for the next 12 months. And the answer that Chippy should stick with is we have a philosophy that all New Zealanders should get free healthcare. We don't carve out the wealthiest from the poorest. And if he wants to go one step further, the idea of it's more expensive to carve those 300,000 out, so it would actually be a waste of our money to do that rather than just giving it to them. And to be honest with you, they're probably still going to pay because they're probably not just going to your local GP. They're probably the richest people are probably going to specialists and stuff that won't be part of the free GPs.
The Mowbrays and the Wrights aren't waiting in an A&E with the plebs.
Yeah.
They're going to their gold-plated private hospital. They'll pay for it.
Yeah, but that means they won't be taking those 3 GPs anyway. That's what I'm saying. So it's like it's a non-issue. Yeah, it's a non-issue. You're right. I'm going to play the last 30 seconds of it, if for no other reason to annoy you.
Care costs in the future, but the way to do that would be by getting sick people who aren't going to the doctor to go to the doctor. You've just said that people who earn more than $150,000 a year don't face cost as a barrier to going to the doctor.
So they don't face cost as a barrier when they go to an emergency department either, because they don't get charged for that. I'd rather they went to the doctor than to the emergency department. Having a universal entitlement to free healthcare, regardless of where you're accessing that healthcare, is a principled decision that I think is the right one for New Zealand.
Despite what
Yes.
Yes, I think that's the end of our clip.
Great
Yeah.
answer. Exactly the same answer that was around free prescriptions. Remember, they had the same argument there of like, what about people that don't need the free prescriptions? That's fine. They get them anyway.
Yeah. Yep. All right, listen, we're going to keep rolling because this is 90 seconds on pay equity, and then we're going to wrap up for the night.
So the economic and fiscal environment looms large over the election next year. The pay equity changes have essentially saved the taxpayer $12.8 billion, although obviously at the expense of those equity claims that were outstanding at the time of that decision.
Saved money off the backs of women who have been trying to get this over the line for the last 10 years. Saved $12.8 billion. I think you mean stole it off the plate that was in front of them and just about to be paid out?
You were scathing, absolutely scathing in your criticism of the government's decision. So are you committed to reinstating pay equity?
We will reinstate pay equity. We will make sure that those people who are going through the process of ensuring that they get paid equal for, they get equal value, equal pay for equal work, we will make sure that that process is reinstated. The overall fiscal impact of that is something that we're working through now, and we'll set that out in our fiscal plan.
So will the pay equity that you are reinstating be different to the scheme that was previously in place, the one the government scrapped?
We're working through the pay equity scheme, the changes that we will make. It won't be a direct reversal, and one of the reasons it won't be a direct reversal is we don't want to cancel all of the existing pay equity claims for a third time. So we want to make sure that those people who are going through the system can complete the pay equity process and can get the pay that they've been fighting, in many cases, for decades for. They can actually get it.
$12.8 billion that was forecast to cost under the previous system. Will your scheme, and I appreciate you finalising the details, is it your expectation that your scheme will be more or less expensive?
Well, the government haven't released the detail of how they came up to the $12.8 billion figure. So what we are doing through our costing is we're going through and identifying how much we think our pay equity will cost to settle, and then we will make provision for that in our fiscal plan.
And from what you think at this stage, appreciating that it hasn't been finalised, is it more or less expensive than those forecasts that the government put out?
We'll make announcements on pay equity, including the costings, once we've finished that work.
Yeah, there you go. All right. I'm also interested at some stage, not tonight, I don't think, Chewie, but I do want to have a conversation around this. Do you commit to? Do you commit to? I hate that question, but I also hate how politicians answer it. Because, do you commit to? The answer to any of those, do you commit to not working with XYZ? Do you commit to not costing XYZ? Do you commit to rebuilding the Dunedin Hospital? Yes. The only answer that is of any truth is you can say, as it stands right now, all other things considered, that is our intention. If, like a worldwide pandemic turned up and it caused our books to be thrown out through no control of ours, maybe we would reassess it. So if you're going to hold me to my feet to the fire of do I commit to, if there's a massive influx of something that I have no control over, then I'm not going to answer your question. If on the understanding that my answer is based on the current projections in monetary or projections, then that's our plan. Now I don't know whether that would be a good answer or not, because it could be spun. Oh, he wouldn't commit to it. He wouldn't commit to it. But that's actually the only honest answer anyone can give to any of those kinds of questions, because you can only commit to things when you know what's going to happen 100%. Things, if anything comes out of the woodwork to knock you off your commitment or your promise, sometimes these things happen. Do you commit to sticking at your job for the next 12 months? Yeah, of course. Oh, something happened and I got called away to Auckland because I had a dying relative that needed me to look after him for 6 months. It wasn't part of my plan, but it wasn't part of the known future either. So I do get frustrated by that in general, and I think we'll address more of that as we go through the next 12 months.